argue with
No,
me.
you always pick on me.
If I didn't argue with you, we wouldn't be there together for how many years?
72 years.
A lot of people say I do, but what they really mean is I'll try.
Somebody said at some point, getting married will change your life. That was in a kind of admonishing kind of way. And I remember saying, well, I hope it will.
Hello, I'm Antoinette Naomi, and I am an anthropologist and behavioral scientist, and this is Reshaping Culture Inside the Anthropocene. The intention for today is to take you on a cultural analysis of how monogamy has become a virtuous choice. So the goal for this channel is to bring issues that are befitting to the human experience and really take them to the analytical table and dissect them, and to see how we can allow ourselves, starting first as individuals and then being able to affect the greater society. So monogamy, according to Esther Perel in Mating in Captivity, it is the sacred cow of the romantic ideal, for it is the marker of our specialness. I have been chosen and others renounced. When you turn your back on other loves, you confirm my uniqueness.
The first thing that I was grateful for, that somebody wanted to marry me.
So it's in a sense a confirmation of one's own uniqueness in the reflection of their partner. The goal is for us to explore this human existence, the way that we interact with one another. What's the way that we can actually interact with one another from the individual lens that allows for us to begin to let go of the cultural dysfunction that we've inherited through cultural transmission over time. And so when I think about, after having had moments in time to really reflect on this topic, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to those individuals that have watched my video on the lessons that I've learned growing up without a mother. I have more content coming forward regarding that subject. The thing that I want to talk about here, though, is really monogamy and just how it became virtuous. And when I'm talking about monogamy, I'm actually looking at the ways in which it has impacted Western culture being American, European culture, the cultures that have adopted the monogamous family behavior. Notwithstanding Muslim law, men under the Quran, men are allowed to practice polygamy. So this is in no way in reference to the Muslim faith. They are allowed 4 legal wives based on the minimal research that I was able to obtain. And when I talk about the monogamous family, it's coming from, if we're looking at Friedrich Engels, we're looking at the, if you will, the evolutionary phases of development between, in social groups, development between individuals when it comes to marriage, from the savagery to barbaric to civilization. According to Engels, we would say in his research with Morgan and many others during that time, we can say that the monogamous family was essentially evolved from its socially accepted predecessors. The monogamous family in certain societies was actually a result of the pairing family, which was the pairing family, the group family, which means the husband had a principal wife among his other women. And during the earlier stages of the monogamous family, it was also that the wife was expected to be chaste. The wife was expected to be faithful. The man was in no way expected to be faithful. As a matter of fact, under the Code Napoleon, during that time, during those stages when the monogamous family was formed, the male, the husband, was never expected to be faithful. They were expected to never bring their concubines to the homes of the wives or to the home of the wife. That is the initial stage of the monogamous family. Beforehand, with the pairing families and also the group families, the lineage was always tied to the woman because the woman was certain, it was certain as to who the mother of the child was, and therefore the property, when it was inherited, was always inherited through the lineage of the mother. However, during the earlier stages of the monogamous family, the paternal supremacy took shape. That means the paternal lineage became more important, and that's the reason why fidelity was emphasized on the part of the woman. The woman had to be faithful to the man so that the man could bequeath the inheritance, his property, to his rightful lineage. So he had to be certain under all circumstances that his children were actually his children. And that was the monogamous family came from, according to Ingalls and several researchers, economic conditions. And we can look through historically from the Greek tradition. Economic conditions were the reasons why the monogamous family was enforced. Now, these historical facts are important because monogamy was not exclusively because of, or even principally because of love, a mutual love between man and wife. It was a manner in which the man could rule his household. And so during the earlier stages of the monogamous family, it was even labeled, the monogamous family was even labeled as a disguise of domestic slavery. So why is this important to Western culture? Why is this important to a woman? Why is this important to a man? It's because from the lens of heteronormative, when I use the term heteronormative, I'm referring to the cultural discourse of heterosexual relationships. So there was research conducted, 61% of those researched were women. It was 246 individuals, college-age individuals between the age of 18 and 47, where they researched the impact of the violation of fidelity on a person's emotional well-being. And so the reason why I feel it's so important is because fidelity is presumed. Fidelity is a value that is presumed in women and also in men in modern day society. Fidelity is expected.
And I trust her, which is a huge element. I mean, when we finally did decide to get together permanently, we were both in our later 20s. And, you know, one of the things that I had learned by that point and insisted to her about was that we had to tell each other the truth. And she took to that wholeheartedly.
So if I interact with you as an adult wanting to pair with you, I am expecting for you to be faithful, whether it be tacit or explicit. That is an expectation. That's a fundamental expectation. And if infidelity happens to violate that relationship, that structure, it's reported that it could create emotional imbalance. It could create emotional issues. It's also been reported if infidelity was perceived as acceptable to the individuals close to those that were researched, the weaker the importance of fidelity was for that individual, and then vice versa. However, what's important that really, like, fidelity was something that was essential for emotional stability. I have some thoughts. So if infidelity negatively impacts the mental and emotional well-being of the individual, then the agreement is to allow the individual to learn how to pick and to learn how to choose in a relationship that says, I'm looking for the journey mate. I'm looking for the journey mate. And also, neuroscientists, they study the brain. There are protocols, if you will, that allow the brain to be kind of like a computer, a working computer, where you can actually really, really get in there and examine and shift some things chemically with your life. With that said, there are social elements, there are cultural elements that influence the brain, that influence the heart, that influence the thinking, the beliefs, the structures, and that actually, based on hardcore research, stop the individual from being able to operate that brain, operate that system the way neuroscientists want them. So that's why social science is so important. That's why cultural science, behavioral science is so important. So the individual can get in there and really work with their consciousness, work with their past, work with their lives, and do it in a manner that supports them. So because faithfulness is very important, we have to think about, let's think even deeper about like the structure and the way, like the dating dance. Like, I just happened upon a short on YouTube about a woman, she's a reality star, and she used the term duty dating. And I thought to myself, interesting. She must have been taught by, or she must have studied Pat Allen's theories and Pat Allen's work. And duty dating is kind of like a term that floats around in this community. I'm going to show you some footage of duty dating.
You are all here because you want to get married, right?
Right. She's a love doctor.
Let's jump in. Who wants to come up?
I do.
What can I do for you?
Dr. Hartley, I'm having the best time. I've read your book, and I've listened to your tapes, and I've practiced and practiced.
Good, you have been duty dating. I advise all women to date 3 men at the same time until they're engaged.
3.
With 1, you'll get too attached. 2, it's an either or. With 3, you can keep perspective.
It works. I've never felt sexier and had so much male attention.
The Southern California community that was spearheaded by Pat Allen. I was a part of this community at some point in my developmental journey of uncovering and discovering love. And in this Southern California community, they are expected to engage in performative acts for the purpose of soliciting love, to market one's femininity, that evoke a strategy that promotes the successful coupling with a masculine man.
Oh, honey, I can't wait. Kiss, kiss.
Darlene.
Just a minute. Jill, call my electrolysis. Get me an appointment today. It's an emergency. Damn little hairs keep growing back.
What's going on? All these calls. How do you do it?
Darling, never date just one man. Not till you get big ticky on your left hand.
How? I can't get past the second date.
You could have men knocking down your door.
Only if my house was on fire.
Not if you knew the rules of the road. On every journey, there are passengers and there are drivers.
What do cars have to do with dating?
So I also want to emphasize that what I'm talking about I'm talking about these dating rituals. I'm talking about the manner in which women have had to do femininity, the manner in which women have participated, have acquiesced to the role of doing femininity in the hopes of obtaining a mate.
These. Out.
But they're so comfortable for work.
If you're Bozo the Clown, out. Presentation, darling. You gotta feel the eyeballs at all times. You never know who's gonna cruise around the next corner.
I got nothing to wear with this. No way. Can't believe I even bought it.
Put it on.
It's too tight.
It looks great.
I can't breathe.
Too bad.
So it's like these tactics, you know, of eliciting love, marketing oneself for love, and exhibiting femininity and projecting these scripts for the sake of obtaining love, like soliciting love. And so according to Shears Leonard in her book, The Wounded Woman, I'm going to put up an audiobook in the coming days, so you'll be able to have access to that book if you want to delve deeper. You can also buy the book if you want to actually look into it, or, you know, just have a copy for yourself and read it yourself. But according to Leonard, the feminine, or doing femininity, is a role that has been defined for women from the conscious and cultural expectations projected on them by men. So it's essentially what's considered conventionally feminine. This is contextual though, because Simone de Beauvoir, in her book, The Second Sex, speaks about the myth of femininity. Femininity in this context is being defined as performative acts of soliciting love. In this context, in this video, that's what it's about. And one such example can actually be pulled also from Leonard's book, where she talks about the eternal girl. She uses the eternal girl. I mean, we can look through history and we can talk about Sleeping Beauty, being arisen from a deep freeze, waiting for her Prince Charming to wake her. She's like the darling doll. Like the darling doll in this prototype is like that woman that becomes the image. She's like the woman that becomes the image for her lover's expectations. In order for a person to really get, like, understand like the mating ritual, we have to go back to like the behavior. We have to go back to the fact that monogamy is something that has had to evolve through both the feminine and the masculine, because there was a time, especially during group marriage, where monogamy was in no way expected of the woman. And then there was also a time where monogamy was in no way expected of the man. However, the woman, it's the woman who had to be chaste, who had to do the vow of chastity, where she had to experience the vow of chastity, forsaking all others, sexually, intimacy, and monogamy, and allowing herself to be faithful. Now, in recent years, and there is the study also understanding the phenomenon of how peer pressure is formed and how an individual can be influenced by their peers. And in a later video, I'll expand upon that. However, the social myths that come with women, it's like there's something about a woman's virtue, a woman's needing to be faithful, a woman looking and being viewed as proper and prim and as worthy and virtuous. Like her actions have been viewed as worthy and virtuous. Now, in the males, and the reason why I bring up the subject of how monogamy has become a virtuous choice is because, or one of the things that is articulated or expressed with the pursuit of finding a mate, finding a husband, or marketing oneself for a husband, is withholding sex, withholding the act of having sex with your partner until the deal is made. So she talks about the deal, and it's so interesting because Esther Perel speaks about this, and other psychologists speak about this, but it's really, sexuality is, I believe she said sexuality is the property of the self. And what I would like to add to that is that if sexuality is the property of the self, that means, based on the annals of history, a man and monogamy, and really what monogamy means within the truest sense of the word, a man is essentially relenting his property of the self, like his sexual property, like his body, the way he carries his body, his desires, his fantasies. He's relenting and assigning his desires, his fantasies, the property of the self, his sexuality, to that woman. He's saying that, like, the contract that women expect men in modern society to enter into is the contract of saying, if, as Esther Perel says it, sexuality is the property of the self, then that means the man is saying, I'm relenting to fidelity, and I have a willingness to share the part of the self, that part of myself, and I have the willingness to deem the mate that I'm choosing, I have a willingness to call it or bring it to conjugal property. And so if sex is the conjugal union, sex is the reason why a person says, okay, I'm committing to this person for the rest of my life. That means I'm giving myself the right to say this property of the self becomes a conjugal property. And that conjugal property is now thereby virtuous under American or Western philosophy. We have this anticipation, or we have this preconceived notion that sexuality within the confines of monogamy, within the confines of the monogamous family, in no way in the confines of a polygamous or group marriage or any style of marriage that prohibits the woman from having the rights, the sexual rights of the man to be faithful and fidel. And in no way is fidelity something that is negotiable. Heteronormative Western culture, the standard typical Western culture. And in no way am I talking about those individuals that may have witnessed infidelity in close relationships, or may have had close peers that actually exhibited signs of infidelity. What is being spoken about is the heteronormative culture of sexuality. And so basically, it's an agreement that is morally being signed over, like the deed is being signed over to that other, and it's giving that other, making that other the one permitted to fulfill the element of the self, like that element of the self, that sexual element of the self. And that's an alluring theory and concept, to ponder. However, as Esther Perel talks about it, she says the erotic desire and emotional life and physical life, they intersect. However, the fantasy, the sexual fantasy, the desire, all of those things vary. Like they vary from person to person. And the biggest part of it that is interesting to ponder is, as when we talk about Erikson and we talk about trust, it's basically trust versus mistrust. That's the part I want to actually read and share. I feel like trust versus mistrust is very important here, because it says basically from birth to 12 months of age, infants must learn that adults can be trusted. This occurs when adults meet a child's basic needs for survival. Infants are dependent upon their caregivers. So caregivers who are responsive and sensitive to their infant's needs help their baby to develop a sense of trust. Their baby will see the world as a safe, predictable place. Unresponsive caregivers who do not meet their baby's needs can engender feelings of anxiety, fear, and mistrust. Their baby may see the world as unpredictable. If infants are treated cruelly and their needs are not met appropriately, they will likely grow up with a sense of mistrust for people in the world. And this is important. It's important because if we can link the fact that we can actually trust them and link it to our childhood and link it to our own relationship with the way we trust the world, then the next stage with the partner that the women are marketing themselves for, how about giving that part of awareness that says trust is a contract? And so if there is a distrust in the relationship, so as Erikson stated in those 8 stages, that, trust versus mistrust, if an infant actually can grow up and be reared and feel safe in the world by their initial caregivers, then they will more likely have the capacity to actually experience trust versus anxiety, feelings of unsafety, or feelings of uncertainty. It also was said in the movie Duty Dating, and if you guys have not watched the movie, I will avoid spoiling it. The three most important elements in a relationship are friendship, chemistry, and partnership. And if you have all 3, then it's something that could create a lasting monogamous journey. However, it's very complex and very complicated. I feel like one of Erikson's stages of trust, really evaluating one's relationship with trust and being able to feel safe with the other, safe with the partner, and then also for the man and also for the woman. However, I'm speaking about the average heteronormative woman that actually has the capacity to actually fulfill the contract of being sexually monogamous with the man. The man is the one who has to relent a part of himself that through the annals of history has been conveyed as okay, that naturally polygamous side of himself, like that polygamous side, he's relenting that polygamous side of himself to this partner and saying, yes, I trust, yes, I'm willing to hand over this property of the self and make it a conjugal property. I'm gonna also show you some footage from John Gray, and in this footage, it's going to be able to kind of weave in some of the things that I'm talking about.
Men's commitment issues are very different from women's. And men go, I don't have a commitment issue, I just lost interest. And but they do lose interest. But part of their losing interest is that
men,
when they have sex without a relationship, without intimacy, then for men, from sex, the brain chemical dopamine becomes so intense that he now experiences this huge pleasure in his brain, and it's associated with the dopamine. This is what cocaine does, produces huge amounts of dopamine. Sex produces huge amounts of dopamine. When you have an intimate relationship, you've got serotonin. Serotonin balances dopamine. So when your serotonin levels go up, your dopamine levels don't go as high. But let's say you're a man who is typically low in dopamine, then you're looking for something to pump it up. Drugs will pump it up, alcoholism is pumping up dopamine, cocaine is pumping up dopamine, and promiscuous sex. That means sex without intimacy will pump up dopamine really high because there's no serotonin to balance it off.
So in that clip, he expresses perfectly how dopamine is something that is stimulated during sex for a man, and it's in no way creating that intimacy bond. John Gray talks about how oxytocin plays a role in the sexual relationship between man and woman, how oxytocin
is the bonding hormone. Friendships, nurturing stimulates oxytocin. For women, not men, oxytocin is what lowers stress in their body. Oxytocin is what keeps them happy. And the irony is, even if she doesn't climax, if he climaxes, which he always will, it will pump them up. So just him inside of her will push up these hormones. She bonds with him, and this guy might not even care about her, might not call her back, might not be interested in her, but her body's saying, must have oxytocin, must have him.
Oxytocin is something that's generated for the woman. It's creating that intimacy bond. It's saying, I want you and only you. And that takes somebody into a spiral of, what am I doing? I'm committing to the wrong person. Even if I want to join the hip crowd, why would I do that? But if a man is having sex with a woman, that's something else is happening. And when something else is happening, such as dopamine, it means he's getting high. He's getting off on it. It's a nice way to get high. It's a nice way to get addicted to that. But he's in no way addicted to the relationship. So someplace inside a woman, Alison Armstrong says, a woman thinks of a man as just a hairy woman, but no, a man is biologically different. He thinks differently, he walks differently, he acts differently, he is chemically, a masculine man chemically relates differently. Sex and making love are two different things. There's serotonin. When a man gets bonded with a woman, serotonin is present. And when he has enough dopamine where both of those things are balanced out, he has the right to actually say, no, I can look at you and I can see I believe that I can have a relationship with you for the rest of my life. That's something that a woman in the dating world has to look into. She has to say, am I able to make a commitment to myself, to actually have a vow to myself, even though part of me says, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, let's just have sex, not 90 days. Come on. Oh, how about a month? How about 6 weeks? Okay, 6 weeks. 6 weeks is a long time. How about 6 weeks? 90 days, that's a long, but what happens if they run away? See, those are like irrational thoughts, because the reason why they're irrational thoughts is because wouldn't it be nice for the guy to actually honor the woman and say, I see that you're looking for a life partner. I see that you're looking for a journey mate. So let me honor you and either A, stay, or B, leave. And if a woman chooses to say, oh no, I'm afraid of allowing myself to ask the question, are you capable of being monogamous, consistent, and a man with longevity? Are you capable of that? Like, those are the things that are important.
It's not the ability to maintain a monogamous relationship. It's the lack of understanding of how effective and useful it is. And often people think, oh, my partner just won't know, or it won't upset them, or they're just in the moment and they don't think. Particularly with men, they just don't think. It's as if God gave men two brains, north and south, and only enough blood for one brain at a time. And when the blood goes south, when he's a young man, he just doesn't think. He's just in that moment and he doesn't think. And gradually with maturity.
Also how the sacred and the profane play a role between the sexual dance or the bargaining stages of coupling. So I will say, the eternal girl has many faces, like the darling doll, like Pat Allen, look good, feel good, smell good. Like, you have to be like the darling doll, the one that allows the man to fulfill his fantasies. And I'm going to tell you, Like men also, there are fantasies on that side as well. Like the woman wants a man, a masculine man. So like one of the scripts that the woman engages in is the 5-second stare. Like the 5-second stare, the woman is expected to flirt. It's a flirting ritual. It's like a mating ritual. It's kind of like a script that actually is expected to elicit a response. The masculine man, he is rewarded by his being active, his action, and actually moving toward the woman that gives him the 5-second stare. That's kind of like the ritual, like the mating call. According to West and Zimmerman, Candace West and Donald H. Zimmerman, they use a term called essential femininity. And essential femininity expands on Goffman's definition of femininity and masculinity, coined as the prototypes for essential expressions for the masculine or the feminine. And with essential femininity, this essential femininity, it's like the woman feels, actually in this cultural expression, the woman feels like she has to, it's essential femininity. She has to look good, feel good, smell good. She has to perform these mating rituals. She has to be a part of these scripts in order to obtain her goal, which is marriage, which is finding a masculine man that leads to longevity and marriage. However, it's almost as if like what culturally has been defined as this essential femininity and then reinforced by acquiescence from the woman, acquiescence from her performing and vying for love, acquiescence from these rehearsed ways of being. Like all of this has come at a price of a woman feeling as if it's essential, she has to do this. And it's been reinforced by society, reinforced by the opposite sex. It's like a continual corporal project of performative acts for the sake of love or acquiring love. So the eternal girl is, in a sense, a part of the eternal girl is that darling doll. And that darling doll is the type of woman that is performing for the man. She is being what he expects her to be, playing these roles so that he can accept her and love her. So she becomes the image of her lover's expectations, adapting to his fantasies and doing that feminine expression. But perhaps inwardly she's fragile and insecure because she's unsure. Do I look good? Do I feel good? Do I smell good? Is he going to love me? Is he going to marry me? Is there going to be a husband for me? You know, it's performative because she's continually posing. She doesn't know who to really be. And so she's being what culture expects of her. She's doing femininity within the framework of myths and rituals. Like also in the book, The Second Sex, she talks about the Sphinx and the Virgin. And the Sphinx is the man's fantasy. She excites him, she enchants him. However, so she straddles between the pure and the profane. And if she deviates from the pure while she's still exciting him before a commitment, then what she's actually doing is she's creating a bomb almost that actually diffuses his desire for her. Because
I think as soon as sex is introduced, everything changes, and most importantly, expectations. I don't do to none of us do to our friends what we would do to a lover.
Right, and those expectations change from the woman. Now let's be real about that.
They do.
For the man, because the man will still be in friend zone, in his head.
That's true.
He's doing additional stuff.
That's true. Okay, but then why does the man sleep with the woman if they just want to be friends?
Because it's good.
Why would a woman want to wound herself in that way when she can just withhold, according to Pat Allen, until a deal is made?
I need to feel safe before entering into a sexual relationship with you. I need to know your plans for us and that you're not sleeping with anyone else.
I don't understand.
Let me finish. And that there's a future that could possibly lead to marriage.
What?
I'm ready for a committed relationship and I need to know your thoughts.
In that segment, you saw that she was saying, I need to know your thoughts. Never your feelings. I need to know your thoughts. So you're asked to talk from feelings, or she's asked to revere his thoughts. And so in some ways, I see that as a very healthy way for a woman to exercise her right to have corporal jurisdiction over her body that says, I'm interviewing you, and before I commit to actually giving my jurisdiction of my body over to you, I need to know your intentions. However, the new generation is going through a process of where do we fit in with this, because that's too old school, this is too fast. Where the matters of the heart are concerned, it's still showing the same thing, a deep freeze with commitment.
It's not working. I gave Graham the exam 4 weeks ago and he hasn't called. I'm going crazy. I called and apologized.
Oh, apologized? For saying no to casual sex?
Don't tell me I blew it.
He's evaluating the loss of you. By calling, you give him a voice fix. If you don't hear from him in 8 weeks, move on. Oh, you'll live through it. Are you duty dating?
I don't feel like it.
It is important for you to keep yourself out there. Think of Scarlett O'Hara at the picnic. Attract as many beaux as possible.
It's awful. I watch the clock counting the seconds till it's over.
And his touch make your skin crawl.
I wish he'd choke on a bone or drown in his soup.
But if you want to get married, you must make yourself do it.
Also, as like they are negotiating like the deal from the 5-second stare to the mating ritual, to the dating, to the sacred and the profane, or the pure and the profane, the virgin and the sphinx, to the I will withhold sex until I need to know that you're not sleeping with anybody. I need to know that you are interested in what I'm interested in, which is moving towards longevity and commitment.
You must practice.
What if he doesn't call back?
That's why you must duty date. Builds your skill, keeps you from obsessing. So, go out there and bring back 3 examples, okay?
And so that's the part of the story, though. It gets kind of convoluted. The story gets convoluted because what's the deal?
What do you feel like seeing?
Something light, not too dramatic.
Attack of the Killer Bees. Yep.
Clarice?
Graham, how was your game?
Where you been?
Dinner. Is there a problem?
Graham, this is Sheridan. We work together. Sheridan, this is Graham.
We sleep together. Clarice! Hey! Now, why haven't you returned my calls? Is this some kind of game with you? How many others are there?
There's no need to get upset. I'm upholding our contract.
Oh, yeah?
I'm not having sex with anyone else.
You expect me to believe that?
Yes.
So let me get this straight. You think it's okay to date other people if we don't have sex with them?
Yes.
That's insane. I don't want you dating anyone else.
Fine. I'll stop when I have an engagement ring on my hand.
I'll tell you right now, I am not discussing the M word.
Like how does one, if someone says, well, you're entering into a contract with another person, okay, if I'm entering into a contract with this person, then I want to make sure that I'm entering into the contract with the person that I really am. And what's the reason why performative acts are things that actually are getting more value than authenticity? If somebody wants to walk around looking a hot mess outdoors and being their 100% self, that comes at a price culturally in the Western culture, especially for a single woman, based on relationship therapist, relationship coach, Pat Allen, and others that promote these rituals and these scripts that say, if you want love, do this. And like pre-commitment sex is taught to be prohibited. Like it's in Western culture, especially from the Christian vantage point, it's taught to be prohibited, especially if you want to secure a relationship that leads to marriage. And also, in a sense, one of the other things is saying that entrapment, like pretending to be something, or being that fantasy for the man so that he can agree, so that he can say yes to you, is saying. And then also, I'm responding to an observation that I've had through that community, of observing that community. In observation of that community, I remember one specific person who she was very withholding sex. She had been engaged to be married. And in that engagement, that actual relationship actually dissolved. And however, her desire was to have children. She wanted to have children. She found a job. She got hired so that she could actually put money aside and make certain that she had the money aside. She got her eggs extracted. She froze her eggs, and she found the suitable mate to be able to bear her children. She got married and did all of the things. With that said, she accomplished the goal of having her children. The marriage is now dissolved. She's no longer married to her husband, but she got her wish, which was to actually have the children. With that said, she was pretending to be something that she wasn't. She was reenacting she was playing these scripts that were assigned to her from Pat Allen. However, in the end, she turned into her true self, but her true self was in a sense entrapment, because so that she could achieve her goal. And entrapment is in no way a consensual contract. However, there are shifts that are happening in the younger generation. According to Esther Perel, in one of the cases in her book, Mating in Captivity, she talks about Ratu. And Ratu is a 22-year-old college student who shares her tales of the hookup culture. Basically, they deem it the booty call. She talks about how they get drunk, and after a party, they get drunk after a party, and they're friends with their male friend, they hook up, they have sex. The next morning, they pretend like it never happened. Then they get drunk again, and then they pretend like it never happened. But then eventually they stop getting drunk, but they just start going to each other for the booty call. But nobody talks about commitment. And she also talks about how she would rather engage with risky sex than to succumb to the risks of the matters of the heart. Like that's very telling. It's very telling about how sex has become like this tool in this new generation. However,
so the great insight for teenage girls as well as for women is when you're going to have sex with somebody, make sure that you're already happy and you're not needing them to make you happy. So you've got that sense of foundation to be happy. The next thing is that if you're going to have sex with someone, make sure it's somebody that loves you, because it hurts a lot. It's not just emotional hurt. It's somebody punches you in the stomach, and it's a wound when you open yourself up and bond with somebody who's not there.
To really kind of dial it back to like the dating rituals and like monogamy and how monogamy has become a virtuous act, it's like the woman, it can even be depicted like with Ratu as this example. Like Ratu is too afraid to ask for commitment, but she's willing to commit the most sacred part of herself, her body. It's almost as if there's still that twinge of giving the man the power to say, I choose you and I want you. And so like straddling between that deep freeze, the woman, the child, the woman, the eternal girl waiting for the man, her Prince Charming, to wake her from a deep freeze to say, you are the one I choose.
The problem is
people buy fairy tales in real life based on movies and books and the PR program that's sold to them by their churches, by their cultures, by their families. And some of those fairy tales end up with totally lonely, isolated people.
It's like in the heteronormative dance, there's so many different individuals telling you how to interact with the opposite sex, telling you what is the most important thing. And it's like, historically, it's like, how do you know as the individual what to do, how to be able to organize yourself in a relationship that's healthy? It's like we think about all of the individuals. Even if I look at on my father's side, because my mother was an only child, if I look at my father's side, they're all married, till death do them part. They were from the Protestant origin of the monogamous family concept, American culture, and that is what I saw. My whole neighborhood was Mr. and Mrs. So I was always Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Mr. and Mrs. Hudson, Mr. and Mrs. Tack. So it was always, I would always address them. And it's all that I saw. It's all that I saw in my neighborhood. So it's like growing up with that concept, it's like that's the expectation. But then being in a relationship, you say, who do I need to be in order to keep him, in order to have this longevity? I don't know. I really don't know. What I do know is that there is a culture of women that feel as if they have to be something in order to be picked. They have to show up in order to be picked. They have to look good, feel good, smell good. They have to market themselves in order to be picked. And there are so many lonely, alone women waiting for the man to pick up the phone and call them, waiting for the man that they gave too much to too soon to actually be that one. And I just say, to reshape culture, to form an agreement, we have to form an agreement with ourselves that says, am I capable of being in my life with my full, authentic, truest expression, with or without a mate? And am I capable of being in my life with a mate? Because if I am, then I have to look at myself in the mirror and say, this is who I am. I have no need to show up and pretend to be anything else. I could just be me. And there are structures, there are individuals that say, well, you know, how old are you? And if you're over 30 something, or I don't know, you are outaged or whatever, and tack, that's a lie. Or maybe it's the truth in their world. And at the same time, what I've witnessed is there is still also a cultural element that says there are spiritual groups that believe that the individual has a soulmate or has a mate that they've agreed to have on the other side before they got here. And if that is true, if that is something that is spiritually correct, then what if that is true? What if that's a chance? What if that's a possibility? But then there's also the idea that quantum mechanics or the law of attraction or the use of the mind actually is the methodology that allows a person to create the relationship they want in their lives. With that said, the element that has never really been examined is those that really want a relationship, but really actually have no desire to go back into the past and let go of all of the trauma that made them say no to a relationship to begin with. Like all of those things, it really it really requires like deeper cultural examination of like, how does the mating ritual really work? What is authentic now? What is the real expression that must take place in order for those structures that have maintained themselves throughout the paths of history, in order for those structures of the monogamous family, which has been constructed, which is culturally a conventional expectation in Western civilization, especially American culture, in some parts of European culture and Western culture, and I live in Europe, so some of those things look differently. However, the woman is very much a part of her own destiny, because she gets to choose whether or not she's going to engage in stripping herself of who she truly is, simply for the sake of actually having a man be attracted to her for the sake of long-term longevity and committed love. However, there are also some other things within like these rituals, within like this community that Pat Allen lauded, or Pat Allen spearheaded. And also, I mean, it talks also Betty Friedman from her book, Feminine Mystique. She, a journalist, according to Betty Friedman, a woman her intelligence was never to be highlighted. As a matter of social standards, instead, a woman's place and roles in society was to be considered that of the best adjusted girl. One who's probably intelligent, but not too intelligent as to get straight A's. I'm on the fence between both, because I understand, because I will be also doing an analysis on loneliness and on the idea of really what it means to actually develop oneself as an individual in society, because everybody wants love. Everybody wants to find their person. Everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to have a journey mate, to grow old with somebody, to be there for them, to be there for each other. I mean, and if they don't, okay, go sit on a mountain. I'm talking about heteronormative, the conventional heteronormative individual on planet Earth. Western, I'm talking about those, even non-Western, those individuals that are being true to their heart, saying, I want somebody to do life with. Everybody wants that. The majority of the individuals want somebody to do life with. And it's just, for me, I just feel like those values that have been vertically passed down from one generation to another, saying this is what you do in order to get your way, in order to get what you want. I don't know. I'm on the fence about that. The reason why monogamy is something that's evolved based on my research, based on the organization of all of the thinking that I've done on this subject, there are a few things that matter. The first thing is the woman choosing the proper mate. The woman choosing the proper mate, meaning the woman having the capacity to say, okay, he is a virtuous man. He's still masculine, but he's virtuous. He has a solid values level that says, I can trust him. When I walk out of the room, I can turn my back and he will never cheat on me. Now, we can never say never. However, there are always those exceptions, but it is in the picker, it's in the choosing that we have to start cultivating. And according to Pat Allen, trustworthiness is built over time. And so every woman has to just be willing to say, I'm willing to investigate this person. I'm willing to, if according to this culture of Pat Allen, if you want to be that woman who here is what Pat Allen says, and I'm in no way in agreement with everything that she's saying or in disagreement. I'm going to leave it to you guys. You can talk about it. You guys can have discourse about it. For me, I've seen some evidence on both sides how her philosophies work and how her philosophies just don't work. With that said, it's still reshaping culture. It's still examining culture. It's still examining behavior, examining a culture of women who say you have to look good, you have to feel good, you have to smell good. You have to, if you're really smart, don't tell them how smart you are. Just leave that off the table. And actually, you have to say what you feel as opposed to what you think. Never argue with a man with logic. Just share your feelings. And so, with that said, in my awareness, I feel like there's still a part of that's the element that's missing, called the authenticity of who the individual truly is. It's like, based on my just tracing through time and looking back at the origin of the family, knowing that we are the product of culture. We are the product of what we have inherited, what's been transmitted to us. We are the product of all of that stuff. And so if we can allow ourselves to align with what we really authentically want, then we can begin to create lives that are worthwhile for us. And I'm in no way saying I'm the expert on this. I'm a human being on earth with my issues, researching for my life in so many areas. Like some researcher said, research is me search. So I am also clear, no matter what, I know that you know more about your own life than I know about your life, because we are experts at our history, experts at our own lives. And so when we take what we've learned and apply it to our lives and look at it as a social science experiment in our own lives, then we can actually begin to make change. So performative acts of doing femininity so that the masculine man can be signaled and he can capture her and whisk her off to an amazing life, versus the profane sphinx that is 100% indulging in the profane with no purity involved, that actually in Western culture, especially Protestant religious culture, that's expected to see women as having to be deemed as virtuous before a man would commit to her, deemed as virtuous before she would be considered as a mate for marriage. So I guess that sums it all up. Esther Perel's kind of expression around why monogamy is so important, especially in Western culture, especially why monogamy is so important for the woman from the man, is because that man is turning his back on all others. There will always be a more beautiful woman out there. There will always be a more handsome man out there. However, when the partners can come together in a unique, special bond that says they're willing to journey together on earth, they've chosen their journey mate, that means they get to be who they really were meant to be. They get to be authentically themselves in the midst of all of the complexity of relationship, because in relationship there is desire, there are fantasies, there is the propensity to roam, there is the need for validation, there is the fear of loss. There are so many contemptuous levels when it comes to the monogamous family, the monogamous relationship, that the one thing that matters most is creating a bond with somebody that you can journey through time with, that you can journey through your life with, that allows the authentic version of you to surface and to explore itself, because we still are these complex beings that have our childhood wounds and childhood traumas and childhood successes and all of those imprints that have been impressed upon us, albeit through culture, through our families, through our environment, through nature, through nurture. Everything has its capacity to affect our lives in so many different ways. So I'm interested in what you guys have to say about it. I'm interested in your opinion also on this subject. I'd love to hear your comments. I read every single thing. So if you have a comment about this, if you have other ideas or suggestions that you'd like for other videos, let me know. Put them in the comments below. There's a lot to talk about. I am so interested in bringing you more content, and I look forward to having great discussions. Let me also know if you're interested in lives. And the more and more I grow, I took a break from social media, almost 6-year break. And I did it for the purpose of just soul searching. I needed to do some soul searching, and I've been doing a lot of research and taking that to the next level with Reshaping culture. And my behavioral science, I'm analyzing the behaviors of humans and allowing ourselves to have a real solid lens through analysis, looking at it from a global lens, but really taking it down to the micro to see whether or not we can, as individuals, really take ourselves to the next level without being bombarded with all of these social scripts, with all of these expectations that have been vertically passed down to us, that have been horizontally passed over to us through culture and culture. So I just want to say thank you so much for giving your valuable time in watching this video. If you like what you saw and you want to see more of it, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and also turn on your notifications, because I am committed to being consistent on this channel, and I'm committed to being a consistent force in your life and in some small way. Also, I'm going to be having Transformation Tuesdays on this channel, where you get to have some transformational coach or inspirational person through time, just a snippet of transformation or motivation for your day. And then also I will be providing an open source library for all of the materials, such as The Wounded Woman, that is going to be uploaded, and you can have access to that audiobook so that you can listen to it and learn from it on your daily journey. Thank you so much for giving your valuable time, and I wish you so much joy, so much peace, and so much happiness. And until the next time, be good to yourself and also be good to one another. Peace and blessings to you.